Equality or equity? Hi, I'm Dave Arnott, the Christian Economist. The inherent vice of capitalism is the unequal sharing of blessings. The inherent virtue of socialism is the equal sharing of miseries. That famous quote comes from Winston Churchill. Here's the difference between equality and equity. Equality means equal opportunity. Equity means equal outcomes, achieved if necessary by unequal treatment, biased competition, and preferential judging. In his article, The Temptation of Equity in the Epoch Times recently, Mark Bauerlein explains it this way. This is what is meant by equity. Because of racial discrimination in the past, we must practice it in the present, but change its direction. Blacks underwent inequality before, and a reverse inequality now will balance the accounts, pay a debt, and produce equity. Yes, it's illegal, but to people on the left, it's right and just. Christians believe that common grace provides everyone the opportunity of salvation. Some accept and have the outcome of life in Christ. Others reject it. Now, it seems like this Christian understanding of salvation should teach us something about economics. We believe in equality of opportunity, but not equity of outcome. Here's another quote. Since the reduction of poverty and the closing of economic gaps are competing goals, on what basis can we choose between them, writes one of my favorite economists, Thomas Sowell, in his book, Wealth, Poverty, and Politics. Christians care about the means. Economists care about the ends. So I'm continually frustrated by my fellow Christians who want things to come out equal. I understand that thinking among economists because they measure the outcome. Christians should be more concerned about the input and less concerned about the outcome. That's why the Bible has so much to say about justice, which is the input, but almost nothing about equity, which is a measure of outcomes. In his book, Fault Lines, The Social Justice Movement and in Evangelicalism's Looming Catastrophe, Vodi Bacham states clearly that the term social justice means equality of outcomes. If the social justice movement went by its actual name, young Christians would not have been lured into it, because the social justice movement is actually cultural Marxism. There's no such thing as social justice. In fact, in the Bible, justice never has an adjective. There's justice and there's injustice, but there's not different kinds of justice. Choices. Fair is an annual celebratory event. Life is not fair. It's a junior high level philosophy. My grandkids think if they shout, "That's not fair," somehow I have a duty to make things fair. I don't. Look, Jesus distributed the gospel unequally. I explained this in podcast number 6, which is titled, Jesus Distributed the Gospel Unequally. During his time, there were 45 million people in the world, 3 million in the Roman Empire where he lived. He talked to about 30,000, which is 1% of the population of the Roman Empire. He unequally distributed his information to 12 men, and within those 12 to 3, and then with the 3 to 1. He said, "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." This rock, 1, that's inequality. Changing the subject a little bit, politicians don't redistribute votes, nor their power for equality. Just about everyone who calls for more equality is not practicing it in their speaking, in their writing, and their exercise of power. See, choices. This is where Christianity aligns with economics. We're given choices. In religion, we choose to accept or reject the invitation of salvation. In economics, we choose to be rich or poor. I know this sounds simplistic, but podcast number 68 is titled Poor by Choice. And in that podcast, I demonstrate, using an individual case, how a person became poor by her own choices. Another quote from Thomas Sowell, who's one of my favorite economists, writing in his book, Discrimination and Disparities. One can read reams of arguments that statistical disparities imply biased treatment without finding a single empirical example of the even distribution of social groups in any endeavor, in any country, or in any period of history. We should not be surprised if economic or social advances are not evenly or randomly distributed among individuals, groups, institutions, or nations at any given time. It's behavior, not skin color. Back to Thomas Sowell. The poverty rate of married blacks is not only lower than that of blacks as a whole, but in some years has been lower than that of whites as a whole. In 2016, for example, the poverty rate for blacks was 22%. For whites, it was 11%. And for married blacks, 7.5%. I know I'm quoting a lot today, but let me turn to Dennis Prager. Dennis Prager writes about equity being sugar-coated socialism. Here's how he says it. Trying to achieve equity is like running toward the horizon. You never catch it, but chasing the equity lie offers the government something it desperately craves, ever-increasing control over your life. So equity reduces individual choice. Yes, I'm using a lot of quotes today because the measure of an educated person is not what you think, it's knowing what others think. Here's another. A claim for equality of material position can be met only by a government with totalitarian powers. Friedrich von Hayek. Yeah, that guy. This is the difference between the conservative and the liberal. The conservative believes in the individual. That's how Christians believe we receive salvation. The liberal believes in the group, but Christians don't believe in group salvation. Enlightenment religion. This is from Thomas Sowell again. This time, writing about religion during the Scottish Enlightenment. Among the changes that had occurred among the Scots was their Protestant church's crusade promoting the idea that everyone should learn to read, so they could read the Bible personally, rather than have priests tell them what it says and means. Another change was a more secular but still fervent crusade to learn the English language, which replaced Gaelic among the Scottish lowlanders and thereby opened up far more fields of written knowledge to the Scots. My name, Arnott, is Gaelic. In the book, Religion and the Rise of Capitalism, Benjamin Friedman writes about how the strict Calvinist doctrine was being changed by the Scottish Enlightenment that informed David Hume, Francis Hutcheson, and his famous pupil, Adam Smith. That guy. This transferred the power of religion from the clergy to the masses, enticing Adam Smith to do the same with the economy. This tight connection between how we see God, and how we see our fellow man. Yes, a Baptist just crossed himself. This is the key to how his first book, The Theory of Moral Sentiments, is about the individual, and Adam Smith's second book, The Wealth of Nations, is about groups. Now, why do Christian economists place so much emphasis on the individual, and secular economists place so much emphasis on the group? Clearly, our belief system is based on the philosophy that only individuals can accept the offer of redemption through the invitation of Jesus. So Christian education disperses the opportunity for advancement, not the outcome. In an enlightened society, with a religion that believes in equality of the image of God, more people have the chance to love their neighbor by producing and distributing goods that enrich their lives. In 30 years as a college professor, I've offered to more than 5,000 students to redistribute their grades. As of today, none have accepted. You know why? It's because they're exercising their fallen nature. They want others' grades redistributed to them, but they don't want their grade redistributed to someone else. Competition. Competition produces different levels of outcome. In a competitive environment, people get rich by making consumer surplus. I don't have time to unpack that today, but I've explained it in podcast number 54, which is titled Equal is Not Fair. Also, you would think that people who want more equity would want to eliminate discrimination. I explain how that cannot exist in a competitive market in podcast number 33. If you made everyone economically equal today, by tomorrow, they'd be unequal. At an international level, this is really interesting. I heard a presentation this week by Andrew Furman of Faith Driven Investor. He asked about the effect of Columbus sailing under the flag of Spain and how that spread the religion of Catholicism to Central and South America. If America strives for equity today, we will have less to invest in the future. That means that the gospel that is contained in our free market capitalist system will spread less. Meanwhile, the Chinese spread their combination of Buddhism and Taoism as contained in their economic system. Okay, there's a lot packed into that idea, and it deserves a podcast of its own. Look for that in the future. Think about why there's a crisis at the southern U.S. border. Central Americans, and those from many other countries, want to get in the U.S. because we don't have the equity-based policies that have killed the economy in their countries. Dan Henninger, writing in the Wall Street Journal this week, makes this observation. Equity is an economic concept. It posits that some have more economic wealth and some have less. The sum may be individuals or nations. Equity's goal is to impose policies by fiat intended to close those disparities. It is wealth redistribution, or soft socialism repackaged as happy talk. 10 biblical commandments of economics. Now, here's a quick review of equality versus equity based on the 10 biblical commandments of economics from the book I wrote with Sergei Seidamatov, Biblical Economic Policy. Number 1, people should be free. Look, they should be free to be unequal. If people are forced to be equal, they're not free. Number 2, work is good. If there's going to be equal outcome, why work? Number 3, don't steal. The government has no money. There are many biblical commandments to give, but there are no commandments to take. The government must take before it can give. To make things equal, you have to steal from one person to give to another. Are taxes stealing? Sergei Seidamatov and I unpack this in chapter 6. Number 4, don't covet. When a poor person wants equality, she is coveting. Almost all claims of inequality are violations of the 10th commandment that says, don't covet. Number 5, honest measures. Inequality is an honest measure. Equality is not an honest measure. You have to change things from an honest measure to a dishonest measure to reach equity. Number 6, trade is good. If you trade what you have for what you don't have, you will either get richer or poorer. That produces different economic outcomes. Number 7, love your neighbor as yourself. If you love your neighbor, you'll love them whether they are economically equal or unequal. To love people because of their economic goods is absurd. Number 8, take care of widows and orphans. The Bible orders us to take care of them, not to make them equal. Number 9, be a good Samaritan. The Samaritan helped someone who was unequal. He didn't make the injured man equal. He helped him improve his position in life, but it has nothing to do with equality nor equity. Number 10, honor those in power. If they're in power, that means power has been distributed unequally, or they wouldn't have power over you. See, authority is good. This is pretty much a uniquely Christian idea that giving authority over yourself to someone else is a good thing. Conservatives think, liberals feel. Equality thinks good, equity feels good. I'm Dave Arnott, the Christian Economist. Fear God, tell the truth, earn a profit. See you next time. For more information, please visit us online at davearnott.com. If you have questions or suggestions for future podcasts, please submit them online or in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.